This episode of Film Riot is brought to you by Domain.com.
Today on Film Riot, we freeze time. Again. But this time cheaply. Welcome to Film Riot, the show that keeps you up to date with all things film. I'm your host, Ryan Conley. And before we get into today's episode, we need to have a family meeting. So over the past few weeks, we got hundreds of requests asking to show how I pulled off the last shot of the latest episode of Pimpy Productions. And after we showed this, we got tons of complaints on how it wasn't DIY, which made my heart sad because a lot of you are looking at this completely the wrong way. Now, many of you got what we were doing and dug it, so massive high five to you. But for the rest, just to clarify, Film Riot is not a DIY show. It's a filmmaking show, which means the show's gonna cover everything that it takes to make a film, from zero budget to hopefully one day $1 million budgets. The idea is to make a free online film school. I mean, my main hope, the number one goal, is in a few years, you'll be able to learn everything that you need to know to be a filmmaker just by watching Film Riot. So soon, we'll get into much bigger productions using very expensive gear with a full cast and crew, and we'll be showing you how we did all of it. Now, can most of you go out tomorrow, get a red camera, shoot in expensive gear with a full cast and crew? No, but neither could I a few years ago, but still, I would have killed to have this info to get me ready for it. We're never gonna abandon the low budget stuff. That's always gonna be there, but soon, we're gonna make do on our promise, finally, of showing you Hollywood techniques, as we show in our opening bumper every week. The other thing is, you should be taking the ideas and techniques that go into some of these things. I mean, one of the things that most excites me about getting into the higher end stuff is some of the innovation that I think it's gonna push. When I was younger, the only thing like this was a show called Movie Magic, which showed behind the scenes of how they did things behind major Hollywood films. Of course, I wasn't able to do anything like it, but it forced me to think outside the box and come up with my own ways of doing similar things. Learning it that way really helped me throughout my career, so just make sure you're not a button pusher, copying exactly how Andrew Kramer, Freddie Wong, or I do things. Make sure you're taking ideas behind it and coming up with your own ways of doing them. Good meeting.
I'd like to have these family meetings every week.
With that said, I did have an idea of how you could throw together a zero budget version of that shot.
Moi, je suis une fille qui swing. J'aime quand ça balance. Oui, moi, je suis une fille qui swing. Le reste, je m'en balance.
That was accomplished in about an hour from shooting to rendering using just a DSLR and a tripod. Let's do this. So the first thing I did was to drop my camera on a tripod, then get a series of shots throughout the house of Eris and Josh in different positions. Now the key to doing this is to not to move your tripod at all. Keep it stationary and just pan and tilt to get all the coverage you need. Next, I bring all my pictures into Photoshop and went about piecing them all together, since I had enough room in each one of the pictures to be able to blend them nicely one with the other. Finally, I have all my pictures connected and have this, which is a massive picture. And then I'll bring this into After Effects, and I'm gonna open a 1920 by 1080 comp, since this picture is much freaking bigger, but I'm gonna put it in that 1980 comp, so I have this giant picture in here, and I could just pan it around using position points to simulate a 3D move, even though this is completely 2D. The best part about being pictures is you can have your actors floating in midair, since I'm taking pictures while they're jumping, so no problems with wires or actors moving just a little bit. And it makes it easier to composite something like an explosion in, since it's just one frame that you're comping in. So I can make my explosion fit by masking around Josh, then parenting the explosion to the layer of my moving picture, and there you go. For the 3D elements, I just quickly tossed in a few objects, which were crazy random, just by using Element 3D. Then I positioned them, created a null, and parented that null to the moving picture again. And all these super random objects are just in there to show parallaxing and push that 3D illusion just a little bit further. So there you go, a decent idea of how you can fake this with what you already have in just about an hour of work. Now, if you want to put a little more work into it, you could start cutting your actors out, take a few clean plates, and move your actors off the background. You get a lot more parallaxing and a more realistic 3D move. Or if you don't want your actors duplicated throughout the house, you're just using different actors and everything's just frozen, well then you can just do this handheld with a glide cam, steady cam, dolly, whatever, however you want to do it. Since you're not duplicating them, it's just going to be one shot. Just have your actors remain still and then track and drop in the goodies. What's that? You want a quick breakdown from how Stark did the rocket? Okay.
Logo.
Hey guys, it's Stark here. I'm gonna quickly go over the shot that I helped Ryan out with. So I just want to point out that because Ryan, he shot it in 5K, so it was a pretty big project. I was gonna use Fume effects to do this fire and the trail behind the rocket, but the problem was it's at 5K, the rendering time and the sim time to keep it up to that, it would not work out. So I kind of challenged myself to do everything in After Effects, and it worked out pretty well. So I'm just gonna go over things here in After Effects, and I just want to bring up the quick things that to keep in mind when I point it out. So I have this thing right here, and it looks like rainbow smoke. And the one thing that I did, and this is how I did use Fume, but for one frame. You can see the resolution was 2000 by 2000. And what I did is inside of After Effects, I used it to fake flames. And let me just bring it over here and change it to one view. Now, one thing I do want to point out too is I used the light, and I used a plugin called Normality, which allowed me to use the normals, which is the red, green, and blue, which was what I used in the smoke. And what that allowed me to do is each direction, if you can see here the X, Y, and Z, that would be how the light would react to it. So I'll just turn this off. Okay, see? And what it did is the light basically used it and said, okay, the red channel is the X, green channel, and so on. So that's how that worked. Let me just Control Z. What it allowed me to do is light it. Now what I did is that same light, I kept the same position. Let me go back to my comp and let it load. So that way it would light everything around it. And I mean, that's basically how I did that. And then as you can see in here, and I'll just go in, I used turbulent displace.
Turbulent displacement, turbulent displacement, turbulent displacement when I'm curving on your face, man. Turbulent displacement, turbulent displacement, turbulent displacement when I'm curving on your face, man.
Yeah, turbulent displace. And it would just distort around. And I just used the fire as a distortion thing. You can see around his ear. Okay. So now the main thing I guess you can see is the let's go to the trails, and actually I'm going to turn the light off, and it'll kind of reveal a lot about the scene, or not. You can barely see, but see, that's what was lighting it, that smoke behind. And I'm just going to work from the back all the way up, if you guys don't mind. And let me go to that layer, smoke, okay, particular, and the shading, as you can see, turn it off. See, now it's just, that's all it is, and I just blurred it like crazy. And that's how I got this like atmospheric thing. And then I kind of I wrote it around the rocket launcher, and then to that same light, because again I'm working back to front, I attached it to this rocket position, and I really increased it, and then just added a lens flare just to sell a little more. But what's cool is this light is actually using the rocket launcher, casting its light onto it, so you get that nice thing to sell it more. Okay, now I'm going to move right on to the rocket. Let's go to model here. Just open it up. And I modeled this in Max, and I textured it all too. So, and this was quick. I hate doing UVs, which is just a thing to texture it. So I got it to work just by doing this, and I just hand textured it, did Boomtown, no idea why, and then did this warning label, and I mean, it worked and it was fine. Now, another thing to sell a shot is I took one frame from the entire thing, which is here with Eris, and there's Eric, and I did a polar coordinate just to fake like a HDRI. See? And it just helps blend it into the environment more, because it is using the environment after all. And then again, I just used the lens flare, and everything was pretty much attached to this light, and same thing with the sparks. That way I knew, okay, this is my point where everything is at, so that way I could just go ahead and parent to that, and let's just move forward here. And there you go. And that's basically all I did, guys. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Last thing though, I do want to point out is one thing to help sell your shots is to layer stuff. This flame is actually a couple flames, and I just rotated in space. So that way it would just adding those layers and then mixed with the depth of field really helps sell it, because then it adds some parallax to the shot. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, you know where to reach me.
Want a new domain name? Of course you do. And if you're an upcoming filmmaker, an entrepreneur, an innovator, a .net from domain.com, my friend, it's going to be perfect for you. .net is universally known and injects your website with instant credibility. You immediately will discover the advantages of building your web presence around a .net domain name. If you already have a .com, you really should get your .net so you can protect your online brand. I mean, is .com already taken? There's another thing that might happen, Josh. .com already taken? What do?
.net.
Get yourself a .net. You can find a .net at domain.com, which is where I would get mine because they're super affordable. Their .net is only $8.99 a year. They're reliable, easy to use, and on the Twitterverses at domain.com. At domain.com. You like that?
Love that.
And domain.com is always wanting to hook Film Riot viewers up. You can get 15% off the already affordable domain names and web hosting when you use a coupon code FilmRiot at checkout. That's right, 15% off domain name and web hosting. So when you think of domain names, think
domain.com.
what he said.
Logo.
Big thanks to Stark for tossing that together. The one thing he didn't mention is the fact that he tracked using After Effects built-in camera tracker. So you don't have to have super fancy trackers. There's still a lot you can do with what's built in. But I hope that gives you a good look at how you can take of what others are doing at a higher level and start to think outside the norm to come up with ways to create your own way of doing things. That is something that will really help you discover your own style and get you to stand out from everyone else. But that is all for today. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. Check out some sweet filmmaker apparel on our Triune store, or follow me on my Facebook page if your heart so chooses it. I'll see you next week when I dress as my mother and stab stuff.